My first experience with Grid was actually at a friend's house who got his Xbox 360 as a birthday gift. And I believe he got one of those bundles with some other titles alongside a few other games as well, but Grid was one of those entries. And I actually was doing YouTube videos around this time under a different channel, however, that no longer exists. But in any case, I was at his house. It was like a Friday evening, and he wasn't a huge gamer. You know, he started playing only because all of his other friends, including myself, were playing. But gaming really wasn't a big hobby of his. So in any case, I went over to his place and I started playing on his Xbox 360, and I decided to try out this new game at the time that was called Grid that he got. And I remember the first time I booted up this game, it just felt so like futuristic to me, like a true next generation game experience, because one of the coolest features I remember was inputting your name and then seeing how the game called you by your first name or whatever you inputted during the whole menu system and navigation. And when you were driving, your name would actually come up as sort of the race navigator came over the comms and would tell you, hey, a turn is coming up, or someone's tailgating you. You know, it just felt so beyond and above anything else from a presentation standpoint at the time. And then if that wasn't enough, you take what felt like the most realistic graphics we've seen rendered in a racing game running on a console. I mean, I was shocked and impressed, and I will never forget that moment. It cemented itself in me as just one of the greatest, childhood gaming memories of mine. Now, recently, while going through my 7th generation game collection, a Grid was up next, and I decided to replay the game, as I don't really remember the first time playing through it if I actually completed the career mode. So this time around, it was actually nice because I was able to go through the game's entire career mode and fully complete it from, starting at the beginning. I just overall had a great time. Now, let me break down my experience here playing the game after all these years. So Grid is an arcade-based racer in which you race specific track cars at blazing speeds across various motor events. Now, what separates Grid from the others is this level of dynamism and intensity, not really seen in racing games before, or at least not really done as well or as compelling as what is here. You're strapped in and you quite literally fight yourself through the competing vehicles as you race the first place, all the while swerving around corners as fast as you can muster and just hitting speeds that slap you with an adrenaline rush like no other game can. It feels almost like these cars are unleashed in such a powerful way, like you're sitting here and you're just holding on to dear life trying to control something so uncontrollable, and you can't help but laugh and smile the entire way through. Now, each car is realized with this incredible attention to detail, and there's just more here. You also get this, like, one of the most impressive damage systems done in a racing game during this time. Quite literally every part of the car can be destroyed or scraped or just come apart, and this affects your driving style as well. If you hit a wall and damage your axle, for example, you'll have a hard time turning in that direction. And there's just so much here from a design perspective that just blew you away back in 2008. And here we are nearing 20 years later from this game. It's hard to think about it, but it's almost that old. And this game still feels just as intense and dynamic as it did back then. I think what we have here as a result of all this, hard work and just incredible detail, the presentation here, what we have here is nothing short of a timeless classic. Let's park for a bit and take a look at the Grid box art on Xbox 360. We got a decent cover art here, a nice view of what looks like a Dodge Viper sitting there, and big bold letters of Grid with the logo. Pretty cool. Simplistic spine there on the side. And then on the back, we got various different screenshots showing, a bunch of different races and styles of races and stuff like that. So all that looks pretty good, but pretty basic and bare bones, I guess you could say. Now, when we opened this up, we got a really nice, clean copy of the game disc here. My console just had no issues reading this. I installed the game to the hard drive as well, as I always like to do. And the manual here is just a textbook example of exactly the type of manual you want in a game. First of all, there's a lot of pages, but second, it's all done in full color. Tons of information just about control and the heads-up display, the way the game works, all the different, career events, the arcade modes and multiplayer and all this stuff. It's just a fantastic and well put together manual with tons of art on top of it as well. And it's just exactly what you would like to see for a racing game of this style. So I very much enjoy having this physical edition, to be able to kind of have this in hand and just kind of look at what the presentation was kind of like when they put this together and actually sold it. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Now on this version of the game here, I got a little ad here for some Xbox Live racing wheels and different chat headsets and whatnot. So I thought that was pretty cool and evident of the era. Microsoft was selling that steering wheel. I remember that force feedback wheel actually back then. I never owned it, but it was pretty cool when it came out. So anyway, yeah, cool look at the Grid box art. Now, during this particular session, I like to touch upon visuals and sound, but I feel anything I just say can't do this game justice. Like I said before, the moment you just looked at this game running back during release, it blew your mind. I think today the visuals still hold up. I mean, I was impressed playing this on my OLED television, and the game just looks immaculate. You have this plethora of just wonderful post-processing effects, a gorgeous motion blur, depth of field, bloom, nearly everything is thrown at you to create this wonderful looking experience in motion. And I think it still stands as one of the best looking games for the generation. I mean, we would still have another 5 years with the Xbox 360. So at the very least, you see visuals like these, hit very early on in the generation. It just boded well for the future there. Now, this particular gameplay is taken from the original Xbox 360 version of the game. Sadly, Grid is not backwards compatible on Xbox Series X. However, Grid 2 and Grid Autosport are, but for some reason, this initial outing, did not make it into the program. And it's a shame, really. I mean, I guess I'm happy those other entries made the cut, but, I have those games on PC anyways, and that's where I prefer to play them. But in any case, the native 720p presentation alongside a smooth 30 FPS target lock make this experience still great to play all these years later. I mean, to be honest, I really had no issues going back to play this masterpiece. I just wish that, it was part of the backwards compatibility program, that it was enhanced in some way. But I felt, equally sucked into the cockpit of these cars, just like I did back in 2008. And honestly, the frame rate target was perfectly fine and stable, had no issues there, and the game just looked fantastic still running on original hardware. Audio-wise, wow, what a showstopper. These engines scream. They literally scream at you with this excessive force and the pitch. You turn up the volume as you're racing and you just hear everything around you. The car sort of jostling in the bumpiness of the road, the pavement beneath you kind of screeching as the tires leave their mark, and then shards of glass sort of shattering as you collide with all this rubble and stuff around you. It just creates this, it's all audibly noticeable, and you just get this great selection of music with interesting choices for an original soundtrack as well. It just adds so much character to this game. I had a wonderful time playing through it, and the presentation here is just nothing short of top-notch throughout, and it shows with how excellent the game still looks, runs, and sounds today. Guys, if it isn't clear already, Grid is one of my favorite racers of all time. It's one of the best racers ever and the start of a new franchise. And while this game was mostly absent during the 8th generation, it sort of came back with a soft reboot, I guess you could say. I mean, I haven't played the Grid reboot from 2019 or 2020, whenever it was, but I did hear good things there. I also must add that the difficulty level here is not a walk in the park either. You really have to drive aggressively at points, and the AI is really good at pressuring you and keeping you on your toes. And if you make a mistake, they will absolutely take advantage of that. And you also get this rewind feature, and someone needs to correct me if I'm wrong, but this might have been the first game to ever adopt the rewind feature, for driving games. I'm having trouble sort of recalling now, but I don't believe I played a driving game before this one that had the feature, and it's just one of those things that had made it into nearly all racing games today. So if it's true that Grid was the first game that adopted that, then this game truly had more of an impact on the genre than just being another excellent, title. It also isn't just about racing GT style cars. You have Formula Racers in here, you have some derby stuff. It mixes it up with plenty to experience, and this helps prevent the game from feeling really sterile or, during its career runtime, kind of feeling boring. So, in any case, Grid holds up just wonderfully against the test of time. It still plays well, it still looks and sounds great, and it just feels like a game that was way ahead of its era. I had a great time revisiting this one, guys, and I'm curious to hear what all of you thought when you played this back during the day, or, if you became interested in this series, much later on. Feel free to let me know in the comments. In any case, I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll talk later.